Welcome in to Fantasy Football Night in America, the Week 7 edition. We've already had one big question answered for tonight's Jaguars Saints game. We're going to try to answer some more for you tonight. Welcome in to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show presented by the FFPC, exclusively on the Better Sports Network. I am Eric Balkman from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course the FFPC. Welcoming in my guest co-host tonight, a guy you know from this show. You follow him on the X Machine at Herms NFL. You check out all his work at DraftSharks.com. It is the incomparable C.H. Herms. Welcome in, Herms. Good, so glad to have you back again.
Thank you for having me back. This is fabulous, and I am just so excited to talk about some Week 7 football action.
And what's great about you is you can come at this from a lot of different angles, like an expert on the waiver wire, an expert with Dynasty. You play a ton of redraft leagues as well. So we'll definitely get in to a lot of stuff tonight and hopefully help everybody. I had such a wretched, like Week 6 from my fantasy football standpoint, like my own teams, as well as my calls and everything, you know, like who to start, who to sit or whatever for like other people on my other shows. Maybe my worst ever. So like Week 7 could not get here fast enough. And we're here tonight. Very excited to be bringing you this show tonight. Coming up on tonight's show, we are going to help you get you set for your start and sits for Week 7. All the latest news around the NFL injury reports. I think all the Thursday injury reports are now out today from all the NFL teams. We're going to get into the Bettorcast at the bottom of the hour tonight. Herms is going to help me set my picks for the Bettorcast. Remember, you should be downloading that app right now in the App Store and Google Play. It is free in both of those locations. Coming up in the second hour, we're going to find out where Herm stands on certain players like Aaron Jones, Diontae Johnson, Kyle Pitts, and more. And to cap things off tonight, we're going to give you some start and sit advice involving players like Jordan Love, Michael Mayer, Keontae Ingram, and much more. That is all coming up on tonight's show. Without further ado, Herms, let's get into it here. We'll kick things off in South Beach. Jeff Wilson got in a full practice both yesterday and today. You would think that he is going to be ready to go against the Eagles Sunday night. I checked the total on that game, probably about an hour or so ago, and it's like 51.5. So you're breaking ties in favor of starting your Eagles and Dolphins. But I think it's a little bit too soon to put Wilson in there, even though Etienne is going to be out. Jeff Wilson is a must-add to your roster. Is he a guy that you can flex out in the FFPC this week, though?
I think it really comes down to if you have enough healthy backs that aren't on a bye week. You know, we're in that part of the calendar where you may have to make that kind of tough choice. But if you have healthier alternatives, it would probably behoove you to wait just a little bit longer on Jeff Wilson. He didn't play last week, and even if he had been active, head coach Mike McDaniel came out and said it would have only been maximum 25 snaps. I'm sure that threshold will be raised for this weekend, but yeah, it really comes down to what you have available to you. But in a vacuum, if you have better healthy choices, maybe just wait a little bit.
I look at it from the standpoint of like, my God, this Dolphins offense is doing stuff we haven't seen in 10, 15, 20 years or whatever it's been.
Yeah.
And we have seen two running backs thrive not only on that roster, but in the same game, and thrive to the tune of combining for like 7 touchdowns or whatever it was, or 8 touchdowns, whatever it was in that game against Denver. So from that standpoint, you'd like to think that, okay, there's going to be a role for Wilson this week, but I think you're right. Unless you have to, you should probably look elsewhere, as Wilson has still not made his season debut yet. And that could be something very, very interesting and very, very appalling if you start. You think about Jonathan Taylor. He made his season debut. He wasn't even hurt. And they really amped down his touches in that game, too. That could be the same thing with Jeff Wilson. Now, I have not seen anything, Herms, on Roschon Johnson today. The last thing I saw yesterday was that he still has not cleared protocol, and he was still out of practice. Now, this game, the Bears game, is a 1 o'clock kickoff on Sunday, so you should know by then whether Johnson is going to be available. The Bears are actually a 2.5-point home dog to the suddenly streaking Las Vegas Raiders. Total on this is 37.5. When you look at Roschon Johnson, and knowing that this matchup could provide very fruitful outcomes for whatever Bears running back is there, is he a guy that if he's active, you simply plug him in as a flex or a second running back, or is there a little trepidation there, obviously, with Deontay Foreman and everybody else they have going on in Chicago?
I think you make a good point about D'Onta Foreman. He's a name that you have to keep in mind because he filled in and played very well last week. And in going through the injury reports and filling that stuff in on the back end of draftsharks.com, shout out, Roschon Johnson still did not practice today either. So it's definitely looking a little bit dicey as to whether or not he's going to be available. But if he is, the value case for playing him in some sort of flex role is that he has shown capable as a pass catcher in this offense. They don't throw a ton to running backs, but he has seen some of those opportunities throughout various games this season. That would probably be the only way in which I would be optimistic for him. Because if he doesn't play, they're probably just not going to target any running back at all. The only other healthy running back currently, and I say that with air quotes, healthy, is that Travis Homer is working his way back from a hamstring injury. Even if he's active, though, I mean, he's more of a special teams guy. We've never seen him contribute huge numbers in fantasy before, even back when he was with the Seahawks. So there's a decent chance it might just be the one-man D'Onta Foreman show. But if Roschon gets cleared for any reason, pass catching is the only case you can really make for him. And even then, it's a big if.
So we're exercising a lot of caution in regards to Roschon Johnson here. Let's play the other side of this. Let's say he's out. Does Homer gum up the works enough where Foreman isn't even a flex play at that point against the Raiders? In other words, if Johnson is out, do you just stay away from Bears running backs in general?
In the circumstance that we're in with, I think, 6 teams on a bye, you throw out D'Onta Foreman. Okay. It might be a little bit weird, but, again, Homer being more of a special teams contributor type guy, he will see some snaps in the offense, I'm sure, in a couple different packages, but the likelihood that he takes major touches away is pretty low.
The Bears are kind of an offense in flux, to put it lightly. What do you make of Roschon Johnson's dynasty value? I mean, there are so many times, Herms, that I draft a running back and a rookie in my rookie draft, and oftentimes it doesn't pan out that rookie year, but that second year is a lot of times we see these running backs take a step forward. I wonder if Roschon Johnson could be that guy. I don't know what Khalil Herbert's contract's like, but I know the draft capital that the Bears invested into acquiring Roschon Johnson. And to me, like 2024 might be pretty bright for him. This might be one of the last times you could buy low on Johnson, right?
I would agree. And Herbert is staring down entering free agency this offseason. He is on the last year of his rookie deal. There's no guarantee that they're going to bring him back. And even though you look at Roschon Johnson and say, well, it was just a 4th-round pick that they spent on him, it's like, well, that's 2 rounds more than they spent on Khalil Herbert in the first place. So wham, bam, draft capital. There's that argument. But then you look at what Roschon has done, calling back to what I was saying before about the fact that Roschon Johnson has been trusted with targets as a pass catcher out of the backfield in this offense. Some people will look at some of the games earlier this season and point out the fact, well, they were kind of playing from behind. It was a bit more of a necessity move and all that type of stuff, blah, 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 game script this, game script that. But the fact of the matter is the Bears are always going to be playing from behind most of the time because they're still not a very good team. So as time evolves, I think Roschon Johnson has shown that he has the capability to shoulder a decent workload, and he's a big boy. He's also pretty good in pass protection. You love to see that. We don't get fantasy points for it, but guess what? It leaves you on the field over some other running backs. Very, very important skill set, and I just like him. I like him a lot. He seems really good. I would take a shot on him because he's not super expensive right now either.
Right. And it always seems like once these guys are drafted and they play a year in the NFL, unless they go crazy town banana pants, you can probably get a good deal on them. One of the other things that might be holding me back from Roschon Johnson in a dynasty standpoint, he plays on the same team as a quarterback. As of right now, he does. As a quarterback who rushes the football really well. And typically we don't see a ton of significant pass catching production from those running backs. And I wonder if that would hold you back at all, knowing that, again, as of right now, we don't know what's going to happen in 2024 if the Bears have the first overall pick. But as of right now, he's with a running back that loves to use his legs. Does that hold you back on making a deal for Roschon Johnson at all right now?
I think right now it makes me feel perfectly fine. I think in a world where we get into the offseason and say Khalil Herbert hits free agency and signs with X NFL franchise, whichever one that's not the Bears, as soon as Roschon Johnson becomes the RB1 on that depth chart, people who play fantasy football have a propensity to get really excited about things and be like, oh, yes, he's got the job. There, RB1 season for Roschon Johnson. As long as you like manage your expectations a little bit and understand that with there being some limited upside to his pass catching, because even though, yes, it's a good skill of his, but how often is he going to, see some of those touches when, to your point, Justin Fields will just tuck and run, baby, and just do his own thing, scramble out when things break down structure-wise. Yeah, it's probably more like a low-end RB2 type of guy that we're talking, or at least a very reliable flex that you can count on for, rushing yards and stuff. But I think it just really depends on what you're buying in for and what your expectations are. So I think buying in now is fine. But yeah, if you wait until later and the hype gets out of control and people convince themselves that he's going to be more than he is, that's when we're getting into some dangerous waters.
And that makes sense. It's all about the price, and it's all about the price with Roschon Johnson and Dynasty as well. Let's stay in the same division, different team though. Craig Reynolds actually returned to a limited practice today, and now I do have my Draft Sharks Shark Bites page loaded up. Thank you, Herms, for that. So you'd like to think that Reynolds is going to be on the field against the Ravens this weekend. Jahmyr Gibbs was also limited, but both of these guys are expected to play. Tough sledding it's going to be against that Ravens rush defense, you would think. When you consider, again, 6 teams on bye is going to be the caveat for a lot of this. But Craig Reynolds, honestly, could make for a decent flex given that Montgomery's probably not going to play. And we've seen Dan Campbell not only utilize 2 backs, but talk about how he really wants to utilize 2 backs as well. Reynolds, to me, might make an FFPC flex, an interesting FFPC flex play, Herms.
I tend to agree, because I've seen certain platforms in what the projected points are for Jahmyr Gibbs this week because it's just like, well, he seems to be the healthiest of the Lions backs right now. But like you said, with Dan Campbell and how he's expressed outwardly on multiple occasions, even going back to early August, to that interview that he gave last week where he was talking about you like to have the running back that, can kind of hammer it out, shoulder, 15, 20, 25, 30 touches, and then have a Jahmyr Gibbs be like the changeup, the sort of, that type of stuff. Craig Reynolds makes more sense as a guy like that. There is a decent chance that they will split up that workload a little bit more than people like. And yeah, on the potential for expected volume alone, I see no reason why, if Craig Reynolds is healthy, he should not be at least a flex in your lineup.
I think that, it's one of those things where it feels so yucky, for lack of a better term, to put him in. Yeah. But at the same time, we could see some fantasy production coming from Craig Reynolds. And I don't think you need, we're in a new era of fantasy football where, it used to be if you were a backup running back, you would never see the light of day. And now we see committees. And I mean, there's been a couple of times this year, and I can't remember the last time this has happened, Herms, but on multiple teams, multiple times this year, I've started both Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, and I've started both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs on the same team, in the same lineup, right? And it's paid off. Another one, Raheem Mostert and Devon Etienne. I did both of those guys, not on the big Broncos week, but the week after, and it's paid off. This never used to happen in fantasy football, and I think as soon as we get that out of our heads and understand, look, there is value in starting a team's second running back on your roster, maybe as your second running back, it makes sense. And Craig Reynolds is another one of those guys that makes sense here. I just checked the rundown. I can't believe I didn't put this on here, which blows me away. So we're going to go off. I'm going to call an audible here, and we're going to talk about the 49ers. So this, quite frankly, sucks, this situation. The Niners are on Monday Night Football this week, and both Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel's status is up in the air. You have a situation in the 49ers backfield where we don't even know, is it Jordan Mason? Is it Elijah Mitchell, who's a full go at practice for the second straight day today? And as far as Deebo Samuel goes, a lot of people were counting on him as their second wide receiver or maybe first flex, and now we don't even know that. And now Herms gets into the whole conversation of okay, well, do I gamble and hold out hope that either Samuel or McCaffrey is going to play? It's tough to pin you down on this on a Thursday, but how are you sort of playing this? And I know there's a lot of variables to the situation, whether you have Mason, whether you have Mitchell, whether you have all three of those Niners running backs, whether you just have two of them or not. But as you assess this situation here on Thursday evening prior to Thursday night football, what do you think is going to happen with Samuel and McCaffrey, and how are you treating them in your lineups this week?
First, with Samuel, he is a guy that has gone through practice weeks with limited participation and ended up playing on Sundays. He just is that type of dude. He's built different. Well, you could probably count on him to be out there. And look, even if he's not out there, you have to plan ahead anyway. It's Thursday. You have plenty of time to, stash somebody, make advanced plans, and just roll out whatever you got to roll out when the time comes. But the backfield is where it gets very tricky. McCaffrey, if he plays, boom, there you go, problem solved. If he doesn't play, that's where it gets tricky with Elijah Mitchell being a guy that has been trusted by Kyle Shanahan in the past. He's shouldered large workloads before and been very productive when healthy. Major caveat, when healthy. He's not always healthy. One of the reasons that Jordan Mason is even on our radar right now is because Mitchell sustained a knee injury in practice. I think it was right before week 4 kicked off. So Mason had the opportunity to step up as the RB2 in this offense. And yeah, it was a couple weird games, including that big blowout victory over Dallas. But Jordan Mason has looked good on the ground. He has delivered. And when Kyle Shanahan was asked about this recently, I don't have the exact quote in front of me. I'm not going to say it verbatim, but they pretty much just asked, like, hey, what are you feeling about, Jordan Mason and some of these dudes? And he was basically saying, yeah, Mason's been really good, but Mitchell has also been really good in the past. So it's kind of ambiguous even from their perspective. So my attitude about it is that as far as I am currently aware, Jordan Mason is the healthiest of all of them. Yes, Mitchell has returned from that knee injury, but, that's still something that hampered him for a few weeks. And plus, we know what his injury history is. A lot of soft tissue stuff, just a lot of crazy stuff that's always kept him out of the lineup. If he's the healthiest guy and McCaffrey is ruled out, I am willing to go with what we've seen recently and just play the fact that he's not coming off of something that has ailed him for several weeks.
I think one of the tangible things that we can offer tonight is Elijah Mitchell. If you have him on your roster, don't hold out hope that McCaffrey's going to be out and Mitchell's going to be worth starting. Even though I just said this about the second running back for all these other teams coming back off an injury, I don't think so. Now, if you have McCaffrey and Mitchell but no Mason, what would you do there? Then is it worth waiting around, and if McCaffrey's out, you play Mitchell?
Yeah, because I think in that situation, you're not really going to have a viable plug and play.
The only thing you could do is say, I don't want to wait around for this situation. I'm going to play, I don't know who's a good example, Zack Evans or something like that on Sunday. Because I don't want to wait around. So you have to weigh it. I guess it's kind of an unfair question because you have to weigh this based on what your existing roster looks like. And if it's crap, then it's probably worth waiting around for McCaffrey and Mitchell. If it's not crap, well, maybe you just say, okay, I'm not going to wait for the Monday night headache. I'm just going to play a guy should be a top 20, top 25 guy right now, and I'll just go with it.
Yeah. And the good news, for people out there who are probably aware of this, but just in case you don't know, teams that play on Monday night will start practicing they'll go Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So you might be, really into watching college football on Saturdays. You might be really into, spending time with your family, going out to the pumpkin patch or whatever on Saturdays. But it'll be important for you to just check back in with those injury reports. You will have an answer sooner than you think. Because one of the issues that people come up with a lot when it comes to these Monday night players, it's like, well, it's the whole day after. What are we going to do? But yeah, because they practice on Saturday and they deliver their final injury reports, then you just got to do your due diligence. You check your phone, check the notifications, check the apps. Just stay on top of it from the day before, so that way you can give yourself the max amount of information that you have available to you, and just come up with a contingency plan just in case. As long as you just are proactive about it, you'll probably find a pretty good way around it.
DraftSharks.com. Check out those shark bites on there. That is a great way to keep abreast of the situation. And because the FFPC has Sunday morning waivers, if you do need to make a move, you'll be able to do that Sunday morning after you find out what the latest status report on Deebo Samuel was from Saturday's practice. Let's go out to the Facebook chat right now. Jim Parsons Jr., our good buddy, chiming in with a defense question here, Herms. Now, he's starting Trevor Lawrence tonight, so he really doesn't want to play the Saints defense. He's got 3 other pretty good options here that he's looking at in Seattle, who's at home against the Cardinals, Tampa Bay, which is at home against the Falcons, and then the Commanders, who are on the road at the Giants. I'm going to say this. I ended up picking up Washington and Tampa in a lot of leagues in my waivers last night, and I'll be deploying both those teams out quite a bit. I think I probably like the Commanders a little bit better just because, we either know that Tyrod Taylor's playing or a banged up Daniel Jones is starting. And to me, that is a team that is ripe for maybe a pick 6 or something like that on when the Commanders take on the Giants. I lean towards them. I think Tampa's a fine start. I think Seattle's a fine start. I'm going to lean towards the Commanders here, even though they're the road team. What say you?
I think if I had to pick, I'm not a very big Desmond Ridder guy. I don't feel very confident in his ability to not turn the ball over all the time. And that's a pretty good thing for a defense. So Tampa Bay, that's the draw for, the Falcons this week. I would just go in that direction. However, if Tyrod Taylor does get that start, the Washington pass rush is low-key pretty good. I know their secondary is prone to getting torched lately. Right. That's a bit of a concern, but also, who on the Giants are we really worried about torching the Commanders secondary for 150 yards and a couple touchdowns? Not really anybody.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's I think Wan'Dale Robinson is coming on, but it's a lot of this over the middle underneath stuff. They don't really have anybody. I thought Jalen Hyatt was going to be the guy that was going to be taking the lid off defenses, and that hasn't happened.
Yeah, where's he at? I haven't seen him around. Are we sure he's still on the team? Guys, hey, if you're on the Giants personnel staff or whatever, somewhere in the front office, please reach out to the show right now. Confirm to us that Jalen Hyatt is still on the roster. We have to know. Yes,
we do. Because otherwise I'm wasting a roster spot in a couple of my leagues on Jalen Hyatt right now.
Yep.
Herms, so this got me a little scared, but I feel pretty good about it now. Excuse me. DeVonta Smith returned to practice today, said he's going to be playing Sunday night against the Dolphins. Quote, "You ain't got to worry about me. I'll be out there." This according to Josh Tolentino from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I was nervous because this is a Sunday night game, and you don't like messing around with Sunday night will they or won't they's. But I guess the damper here is a little bit oh, man, this could have been a great Dallas Goedert game, and now he's probably back to, 6 for 50 or something like that again,
yeah.
But Smith, if this is a hamstring at all, or this is a hamstring injury, are you nervous at all about deploying a guy who's battling a hamstring injury, given that we have seen guys lifted from games when they re-aggravate it, #Aaron Jones. So I wonder if that plays into this at all, or is Smith just no, he's good, get him out there?
It makes me nervous when you compound it on top of the fact that over the last couple of weeks, he's just seen a huge dip in his involvement. It's getting a little bit nerve-wracking to start him in your lineup. So I know that I have him rostered in my most important league that I play in, and it's making me pull whatever, semblance of hair that I have left on my head out. And it's just so, I don't know. My theory is that, because A.J. Brown kind of made a fuss about not getting targeted enough, not getting involved. And then all of a sudden, it's just 100-yard game, 100-yard game, 100-yard game. What I think DeVonta Smith should do is just put out his own set of complaints toward the coaching staff and see if they respond to that. I don't know. I'm half kidding. But, yeah, honestly. But
only half. Half kidding.
Only half kidding, because, for real, A.J. Brown got his way. And I know that, kind of entering this season, I was one of the people that was there's not a huge difference between A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. I mean, you can kind of draft them around the same range. And, as long as you get a Philly wide receiver, your team is going to be happy, which was true-ish for about 3 weeks. And then over the last couple, it's just really cratered. And I don't know, man. The hammy on top of that just makes it worse, because even if he does play the first half or something, only gets 3 targets, and you're really annoyed about that, and then he tweaks something, it's gonna make it even worse, because then he'll not only will he not be involved, he'll probably just be out if he re-aggravates it for multiple weeks. I think they have a bye coming up at some point fairly soon, but I digress. It's very concerning. I think I would be confident playing DeVonta Smith as a flex, But if you're really counting on like big wide receiver 2 numbers or for him to explode anytime soon, like you're just going to have to play the waiting game. It's going to take patience.
Better Boss chiming in, telling us that the DeVonta Smith came on late last season, and the same thing could happen again this year to buy low on DeVonta Smith. I will say this, and I think this is a case of we should have a segment of the show called "Balky Makes Stats Do Whatever He Wants to Prove His Point." And this isn't a point I'm trying to prove, and there's way too wordy. I got to work on that. The Eagles were 6-0, 5-0, beg your pardon, coming into this game against the Jets. They lose the game against the Jets 20-14, and that was the game that DeVonta Smith saw the most targets. The most targets he's seen in any game all season came in an Eagles loss. Just putting it out there. So we'll leave it there too. Let's get to a couple more questions here from the Facebook chat. JPJ, Christian Kirk or Rashid Shaheed? To me, this is a slam dunk. You play Christian Kirk over Rashid Shaheed, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Now here's where it gets tricky. Christian Kirk tonight against the Saints in New Orleans, or that game is in New Orleans, right? I'm looking at it right now. That's New Orleans. Christian Kirk tonight in New Orleans, or DJ Moore this week catching passes from is it Bagent or Bagent?
Tyson Bagent, the pride of Shepherd University. Shout out. I have a lot of buddies who went to school there. So it's
really? That's awesome.
I live maybe like a little under an hour away from Shepherd. So the fact that Bagent's like actually becoming a thing is like really cool to the niche audience of people who live near Herms. It's great.
I think that it like now I have to dial back my Bagent, because I thought the thing was, and I'm a Packers guy, so it's Tyson Bagent because he's bad. Now I can't say it because he's not bad. He's from Shepherd University, and his arm wrestling champion father would come right through the computer screen and kick my ass. So I will lay off of it now. But your thoughts here? This is interesting. Christian Kirk in New Orleans or DJ Moore at home against the Raiders. I think this is close, Herms.
It is, in a world where Justin Fields is magically able to, get his thumb right and everything, then like that will clear things up for you. But let's operate under the assumption that it is Bagent out there. Mm-hmm. Look, he's a talented cat. I'm very happy that he has made it this far in his football playing career. But mind you, Shepherd University plays, I think, Division III football. So this is it's a huge talent gap. All right. Mm-hmm. Also, Christian Kirk. Calvin Ridley's come back on like a little bit of late, like he's starting to find his footing, but the bulk of the targets are really going toward Christian Kirk. He is, by and large, at least for our fantasy purposes, the wide receiver one in this offense, and he does a lot of stuff operating in intermediate parts of the field. They're not exactly challenging throws for him to come down with, so like I'm just going to go with that because he's been awesome. Anybody that was really nervous about Christian Kirk entering this season being like, Ridley's in town, he's going to bounce back. It's like, well, I mean, kind of, but they paid Christian Kirk a lot of money, man. They paid that dude a lot of money, and they're using him like that. So, yeah, absolutely go for that.
Christian Kirk last week, only 3 catches for 49 yards, but he did score a touchdown. It was a blowout win. He was not required. His services were not required a lot in the second half. If you look at the prior few games before that, 6 catches, 8 catches, 4 catches, and then 11 catches. Throw out that week 1 game against India. Basically, his 2 worst games have been against the Colts. They don't play the Colts the rest of the season. Wheels up for Christian Kirk. I'm going to agree with you here. I think you play Kirk over DJ Moore. Get him in the game tonight. Prime time, under the lights. It's more fun to root for Christian Kirk tonight. Thomas Glaze, a longtime FFPC player and a multi-time FFPC High Stakes League champion, watching us on Facebook tonight. He's got the Jaguars D and he's got the Tampa D. And you know it, Herms, he can only play one or the other. Is it Jacksonville tonight in New Orleans, or is it Tampa at home against Atlanta? You were just talking about the Tampa defense before. I'm going to play Tampa over Jacksonville tonight. Slam dunk.
Yep, same reasoning. I'm not a huge Desmond Ridder guy. I think he's going to turn the ball over enough and they'll be relevant. So, yep.
Another question. This is maybe a little bit more difficult. Thomas Glaze also asking, this is an ugly week 7 for him. He's got a running back question, and it's coming down to either Kenneth Gainwell on Sunday Night Football, a game where I just said you should probably be starting all your Eagles and Dolphins. That is in Philadelphia, so he's at home taking on the Dolphins on Sunday night, or he can play Zack Evans, who we think is going to be the starter in the Rams backfield against the Steelers defense, which has been pretty good against running backs this year. This is tough. I lean towards Evans on this because of the volume, and I just don't know what Gainwell's role is going to be, even though the team could be putting up a lot of points. I think I'm going to lean towards Zach Evans here over Gainwell. Herms, your thoughts?
I'm just going to have to roll with Zack Evans because, look, I had him very aggressively ranked in my pre-NFL draft rookie rankings. Sometimes they talk about, like analysts need to own their L's and pull receipts and blah, blah. So, well, look, like I had him, I think, ranked as like a top 5 or 6 running back in this class, and then he fell to the 6th round, and it took like a guy getting traded and 2 injuries for him to find his way into the lineup. So, like, I get, maybe not as talented as I thought he was, but I'm still going to believe in Zach Evans because at least there is a world in which he could take the majority of the touches out of this backfield. Whereas Gainwell, it pretty much requires DeAndre Swift to get hurt in this game for him to elevate to a level of actual fantasy viability. Because, Gainwell gets sprinkled out there a little bit. He gets a handful of carries, but that's at most been getting you maybe a 3 to 5.5 fantasy points lately. Mm-hmm. That's not going to move the needle for me. So I'll roll in with my guy. I'll stick with it. And also, just selfishly as a Steelers fan, I'll tell you, the run defense, when healthy, is really, really good. But, Cam Hayward's still out. There are a couple other guys that, been somewhat questionable over the last few weeks. Keanu Benton's been, pretty interesting, young player coming in. But, they're a run defense that wears down as the game goes along. That is something just from a fan's perspective, I don't know how much that's really worth. I think they're not as stout as I think the reputation kind of earns them. So, yeah, long-winded, but yes, I still believe in you, Zach Evans. I still believe.
I very, very on-brand response from Herms, which we appreciate. I got plenty of Steelers stuff peppered in throughout the show tonight, too, and we're going to get back to it. In fact, let's stay on that right now. Pat Freiermuth, full participant yesterday, full participant today. He's on track to come and play in this game against the Rams, and they are awful trying to defend the tight end. Freiermuth, I know he's been out, Herms, but, man, you got to get this guy in your lineup this week, especially tight end premium.
I'm still going to believe, man. I know he hasn't seen a lot of targets over the first several weeks, but that has come through the fact that, he missed half of week 1 because as soon as he caught that, touchdown against the Niners, he got sandwiched between 2 defenders. He came back to play against Cleveland, but I'm not entirely sure he was fully healthy. I think he was just out there in week 2 as a decoy, just, to kind of run out there and take eyes off of other players and stuff. So, when you put all of this into context and consider the fact that, he's been banged up and also just Matt Canada, I'm going to bite my tongue. We don't have enough time for me to talk about Matt Canada, but either way, his talent alone dictates that, of course they have to get him more involved. But the tricky thing about it is Deontay Johnson also coming back. They both tend to operate a little bit more in that short to intermediate part of the field. So maybe they'll run some complementary, routes and stuff, also mesh concepts or whatever.
Right.
We'll see. But yeah, dude, in the tight end landscape, I'm just willing to go for a guy that also has a pretty good nose for the end zone. Pat Freiermuth, I'm here for. I'm believing in the talent. That's the only thing that I have just to hold on to at this point.
Speaking of that tight end landscape, a guy that's been a conundrum for a lot of fantasy owners, Dynasty as well. We'll get your Dynasty thoughts on Dalton Kincaid, but he fully participated in practice yesterday and today. He's averaging just over 4 targets, just under 4 catches, and about 25 yards in the games he has played all the way through that he did not leave early this year. Kind of underwhelming when you consider the chops of this guy coming into the NFL and the fact that the Bills traded up for him. And they didn't really have, Gabe Davis is fine, but he's been hyper efficient this year. We normally have not seen this type of efficiency from Gabe Davis. And they don't really have a viable third option unless you want to talk about James Cook or something like that. It's a little bit weird to see Kincaid not doing more numbers. How surprising is that for you? Is this off kilter of what you expected to see from Kincaid as a rookie? And is it a good time for FFPC Dynasty owners to pounce and make a deal for Kincaid buying on the low? I know that's a lot of questions right now, Herms, but your thoughts on Dalton Kincaid in general.
I think he's an incredibly talented pass catcher, and I think that, the amount of involvement that he's seen early in his rookie season is encouraging. If you just look at it through the lens of understanding, a lot of rookie tight ends don't get trusted with any volume right out of the gate, So we can panic about how little he's seen. And also, mind you, his average depth of target on these throws is pretty low compared to some of like the bigger play tight ends that we see. I mean, especially over like the last couple of weeks, like Michael Mayer, they're taking like deeper shots down the field with him out there in Las Vegas. Like that is definitely a part of it. And then also the fact that the Bills' offense has been just weird, especially over the last couple of weeks, like the way that they're divvying up the touches out of the backfield. It's become like almost just like a 50-50 snap share between James Cook and whatever older guy they feel like throwing out there, which, is now it's going to be Latavius Murray, the 33-year-old wonder who can't seem to go away. Like they're having a hard time figuring out how to get anything going. So I don't know that it's necessarily an indictment on Kincaid specifically. He's a first-year player. Everything's weird. But yes, for as excited as people are about Michael Mayer coming on recently, as awesome as Sam LaPorta's been right now, some people are starting to sour a little bit. But like you said, dynasty people out there, if you see that buy low opportunity, I still would love to buy in on a first-round NFL draft pick that the team moved up for in what is normally one of the league's best and most efficient offenses, by and large. Recent skid aside, everybody knows the Bills are the Bills. So, yeah, absolutely, give me that buy low window if it exists.
Yeah, think about rookies, man. Like the end of November, after Thanksgiving, a lot of times it starts clicking for these guys. We talk about the rookie wall a lot of times in the NBA, but it almost seems like it's the opposite in the NFL. Like a lot of times we see these, day one and day two picks, all of a sudden the light turns on, it starts clicking, and then they end up finishing their rookie season strong. That could be the case at Dalton Kincaid. One final thing I want to get to here before we go to our first break. Kyler Murray is practicing yesterday and today. Head coach Jonathan Gannon says that Kyler Murray is a full go. Now, he probably won't be a full go in week 7, week 8, probably not. Week 9, Herms, I mean, we could be talking about, now, with the FFPC main event, the Fantasy Pros Championship, we're basically already, at the halfway point of the season. This is sort of kicking off the second half of the regular season right now for those formats. But, I mean, if you're playing in a 17-week season, I mean, you could still get half a season out of Kyler Murray. Is that what we're looking at here? I mean, this guy should be rostered everywhere.
This is somebody that we talked about on the site all summer as if you just wait on quarterback, whether this was, like you were saying, like the main event format or people who play in best ball tournaments or even your redraft leagues, like regardless of format, taking Kyler Murray late was always a sound move. And we're starting to see that pay off a little bit. I mean, like you said, probably not a full go this week. Next week's a little bit dicey, but like if he comes back, even if it's just like by week 9, like at the latest or whatever, you're still going to get like close to half a season of a dude who has finished within, like, I think the top 7, if I recall off the top of my head, in fantasy points per game over the last 3 seasons. This dude is so good. If he's still out there on your waiver wire for whatever reason, pick him up. Unless you're currently rostering one of the elite quarterbacks in fantasy football right now, you could probably use Kyler Murray's help as soon as he comes back. I'm so excited, man, especially for like dynasty managers that like bought low in the offseason. Congratulations. It's about to pay off. You bought the dip on a guy who was like ranked outside of the top 12 in dynasty for a lot of people who, as we know, can perform like a top 5 dude when he's out there. So just wheels up, Kyler Murray. Let's go.
Indeed. Now, you can't use Kyler Murray in the FFPC Weekly Challenge this week, but you could still play it by going to myffpc.com. The FFPC Weekly Challenge features no draft, no salary cap. You just pick your players. If you want to play with 10 without kickers and defenses or 12 with kickers and defenses by 1 p.m. on Sunday, and then just watch your team ride it out through the weekend. Remember, only 1 player per NFL team. You can't stack. This is basically the same format as the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. $35 or $200 to enter. You can win up to $2,500. myffpc.com, myffpc.com, myffpc.com is where to go for that. I buried the lead. I don't think I mentioned this. If I did, I'm going to repeat myself. Trevor Lawrence officially active for the game tonight against the Saints. I'm just watching pregame here. It looks like he's got a significant brace on that sprained left knee. Doesn't seem to be inhibiting him, in warm-ups and moving around at all. So start your Trevor Lawrence shares because I think it could pay off tonight against the New Orleans Saints. Speaking of that game, let's talk about the Bettorcast. Here's what you do. We're going to take a quick break. Go to the the App Store or Google Play. Download the Bettorcast app for free if you already have it, which a lot of you already do. Go ahead and open it up. We're going to play along. Herms is going to help me make my pregame picks on the Bettorcast for tonight's Jaguars-Saints game. It's going to be a lot of fun. Herms, C.H. Herms from DraftSharks.com. You follow him on the X at Herms NFL. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. Bettorcast coverage coming up right after this.
I like to eat my feelings. So when I'm like super sad, single serving pint sizes of Ben and Jerry's, I just start shoveling that in, and it makes me feel bigger and better. But so let's eat our feelings here. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk football players, food. We're gonna pair them up. Who is represented by what food? All right. I want to just shout out Hal Alexander in there for CMC, Christian McCaffrey, is Rocky Road ice cream. A little bit of everything.
Yeah,
does it?
Going out.
I like it, man. You know it. I love me some Rocky Road ice cream. Bijan Robinson prime rib. You know what? Bijan Robinson prime rib with a baked potato and some cream spinach on the side. That's what I'm talking about. That is the King's dinner. And Bijan Robinson, I don't care if the dude from The Athletic says only 301, touches. You know what? In honor of Card Sharks, I'm going to say, guys, that I think that number is going to be a little bit higher there for Bijan Robinson. So get your knife, get your fork, you got your steak, you got your Bijan.
Yeah, that's what's up. You're on death row, and they say you get one last meal, and you just say Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I'm totally down with that. Love it.
I got to jump in on one real quick because Mr. Scamper said Kareem Hunt is candy corn, and I actually had a player, Tyler Boyd, was going to be candy corn for me, and basically it's that nobody likes it, but it's always there. It's always there, and somebody always puts their hand in and grabs some and has some, and they're like, well, and afterwards they're like, why did I eat that? That's Tyler Boyd. He always gets drafted, and he's just kind of there, and nobody knows why. Nobody knows why they take him. Nobody knows where it comes from. Where does the candy corn even come from? Like, it's just there. It's just there.
Balkman dusted off to play this afternoon.
Hot Six Fantasy Football Show rolls on here on the Better Sports Network. 18 minutes until the top of the hour. Hey, we're going to get into the Bettorcast portion of the program, a very fun, interactive portion of the program tonight. You could actually play Bettorcast tonight during the Jaguars and Saints game at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time, which is about 33 minutes away from kickoff. You can actually predict what's going to happen in the game to score points, win prizes. Hang out with the community. We'll talk about all the big plays, the top performers, and the fantasy bust for Week 7 in real time. Hopefully there's not a whole lot tonight. Watch Thursday Night Football with us. Play our free contest and win tickets. The more questions you answer, the more tickets you win. You can redeem those tickets for authentic NFL signed gear and collectibles. All you have to do is download the Bettorcast app for free in the App Store and Google Play. You have to be 18 years or older. Now, Herms, let's get in this. And by the way, I'm joined by C.H. Herms from DraftSharks.com at Herms NFL on the X. Let's get into this tonight, and we'll talk. We'll kick things off. There's 9 questions we have to answer here, and I'm going to lead things off with Chris Olave. So the Bettorcast has him right now at 60.5 receiving yards. Are we going to go more or less than that, bearing in mind that this dude has hit 60.5 4 out of his 6 games this year, but he's only hit it once in the last 3 weeks.
That's tough. But if I had to make the pick, I would go for it. I would go for the over, just because I think the reason that he struggled the last, couple weeks before this past one is the fact that, like, Derek Carr, got that pretty nasty hit to the ground against the Packers and sprained that AC joint. So there's only so much that you can do as a wide receiver when your quarterback on his throwing shoulder can't just like yeet the ball to you all the way downfield. Like, I think that has way more to do with it than anything Chris Olave was doing wrong. Because, as a reminder, if you watch football, the quarterback always has the ball in his hands. He has control over what happens. Running backs, they're only one thing away from immediately being in control of their own destiny. The quarterback gets the ball, hands it to him. Mm-hmm. Wide receivers are kind of out on their own island. They can't really make their own magic happen because they are entirely reliant on the quarterback seeing them, throwing it to them, making sure it's a good pass, and then having it land in their hands. So, like, if you're worried about Olave or anything like that, just remember, Derek Carr's shoulder was hurt. He's starting to look good now. He went for over 300 yards against the Texans. It seems like that shoulder is doing better. I'm willing to bet on the talent.
You know, and I'm just looking at the Prime broadcast tonight. They have the lower third graphic. Derek Carr last week, season high in completions, season high in attempts, and season high in passing yardage, 32 of 50 for 362 yards. And Olave did hit, I think he had 96 receiving yards last week, targeted heavily. We went over on Chris Olave. Now, we're going to talk about Calvin Ridley and his total right here. I want to ask you a question first, Herms, because I honestly don't know. Where were you on Calvin Ridley prior to the season starting? Did you think that this guy was in for a Boffo season and you should be investing in him, or did you have some trepidation?
I was rooting for him because he's a very sympathetic figure, especially if anybody read his entry to the Players Tribune. You know, I feel for the guy, you know, especially, you know, dealing with, you know, mental health issues and all that stuff. That's a very, you know, sensitive topic to me as well. So, you know, like I want him to do well, but at the same time, a couple years away from football, he's 28 years old. I was expecting him to be good, probably not a wide receiver one, and I was always pretty adamant about the fact that you could just draft Christian Kirk like 2 or 3 rounds later and get a better value out of it. So like I was always here for it, but I was never among the group of people that just assumed he would pick up right where he left off.
Totally with you. In fact, when Calvin Ridley was creeping up to the top half of the third round of drafts, I'm like, you know, this is getting a little out of control. He could have a big year, and he might have a big year. But when you consider, you know, being away from football for a year and a half, new offense, new OC, new head coach, new quarterback, new team, new everything, and especially that Deshaun Watson thing was still firmly in my mind of when he came on at the end of last year, and he just was rusty as all get up. I was out on Ridley. Now this season, he obviously crushed it week 1 against the Colts, 8 for 101 and a touchdown. He had a great game at Buffalo a couple of weeks ago, 7 for $122. Outside of that, Herms, 2 for 32, 3 for 40, 2 for 38, 4 for 30. He hasn't exactly hit, and I would imagine he's going to get probably some Marshawn Lattimore treatment tonight. I don't know about every play, but he's going to get some of it. Ridley's total is at 53.5 receiving yards. And yes, I am leading the witness, Your Honor. I'm sorry. But where do you think Ridley ends up tonight? More or less than 53.5 receiving yards?
I'm going to follow your lead. I don't know that he's going to go over this. I have been kind of nervous about the circumstances of the Jaguars offense for a while. Mind you, the information that I'm about to cite is a few weeks old because this column that I wrote for the website over at draftsharks.com is a little bit outdated. But one of the things that I pointed out, I do a weekly series called the Dynasty Player Spotlight. And I try to go through and highlight players that are doing really well or dig into some of the reasons why certain players are doing very poorly. And I think at the time it was like ahead of week 4 or 5. Trevor Lawrence had 0.9 fewer seconds of pocket time to get the ball out than he did last year. There was just a lot of things working against him to be able to deliver quality passes to people downfield. That was one of the things that definitely worked against Calvin Ridley because we saw like a shrink in his average depth of target from when he last was a full-time player a couple of years ago. He's primarily a downfield threat, and if the quarterback doesn't have a lot of time to get that ball out, that's one problem. And then the other issue is anytime Calvin Ridley has been shadowed this season by a very talented cornerback, they can kind of shut him down a little bit. I think about when they played the Chiefs and like L'Jarius Sneed's a pretty good cornerback. He was pretty much all over him for most of that game and kind of, you know, made it difficult for Ridley to actually achieve those contested catches. So Lattimore, very talented guy, kind of makes me a little bit nervous. And all the things that we talked about, Christian Kirk just like being the dude in this offense from before applies here as well. I think if there's a Jaguars receiver you want to, you know, bet on for, you know, these purposes or even just for general fantasy purposes and stuff, I'm way more comfortable trusting Christian Kirk than I am Calvin Ridley.
I'm with you. We went under on that. I want to move back to the Saints here. The next question, Alvin Kamara. Let's get into this. His total, just rushing yards, not total yards. Rushing yards only, 50.5. Now, Kamara obviously missed the first 3 games of the season because of the suspension. He's hit 50.5 every single game. He had 51 against Tampa. He had 80 against New England and 68 against Houston. Those last 2 games were on the road. And it's kind of interesting. They crushed New England. They lost to the Texans. Both those games, he got 3.6 yards per carry, which is exactly what the Jaguars are giving up this year, 3.6 yards per carry on the ground to opposing running backs. So Kamara, I mean, like, I guess on the surface, if we just eyeball it, we say, well, he's going to go over for sure, right? But maybe, I don't know. I don't know if you have any insight in this, because to me, just again, at face value, it seems like he should go over.
I think, since returning from suspension, he's been somewhere between the ballpark of an 85 to 90% work share of just the overall running back touches in that backfield. Nobody else has really factored in that much, except for the one game against the Patriots, in which it was like so much of a blowout that they just shoveled some work to Kendre Miller just to kind of, bleed out the clock a little bit and protect Kamara a little bit. Oh, but the other games that they've played that have been more competitive, it's been the Alvin Kamara show. It is basically just like his backfield, and the only other player that we would really be concerned about, I guess technically, would be Jamal Williams, but this is his first game back on a short week, returning from IR because of that hamstring injury that kept him out ever since he sustained that in that Monday night game against the Panthers. So, I don't think he's going to be that much of a factor this week at all. I think if there is going to be an opportunity for somebody to come in and kind of be the thorn in Kamara's side, it's going to happen next week at the earliest, not this week. So, yeah, just Kamara on volume alone, you just have to go for it.
Yeah, and now that Derek Carr's shoulder is mostly healed, he's not going to dump off 13 receptions to Alvin Kamara tonight too. Okay, let's look at Travis Etienne here, a guy who has his rushing yardage set on the Bettorcast, 64.5 yards on this. Now, this is interesting because Etienne has hit this total in 3 games, 77 against the Colts, 88 against the Texans, 136 against the Bills. He also failed to hit it 3 times, 40 against the Chiefs, 55 against both the Falcons and then the Colts the second time around. So Etienne, this might be like a game script type thing. Like if you think the Jaguars are going to come out and are going to try to control the clock, let Etienne kind of eat and be grinding stuff with him and keep Trevor Lawrence away from, having to make any more athletic plays with that bad knee than he already has to, then maybe you say over here. But at the same time, this is a game on the road. This could be a game that New Orleans actually controls the game with Kamara, with Jamal Williams, with Kendra Miller, obviously. And you think about the Taysom Hill factor as well. Maybe then Etienne is like, he doesn't touch 64.5. Where do you stand on Etienne here tonight? 64.5 rushing yards, Herms, more or less than that?
Yeah, they have it placed at just like the perfect spot. Credit the line maker on this one. Like that's A+ work. Much like Alvin Kamara, Travis Etienne has been a dude with just like around a 90% work share of the running back touches in Jacksonville. I apologize to anybody this preseason who listened to me about the fact that Tank Bigsby was going to come in, it's going to be a committee, and blah, 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 blah. Egg all over my face. I was completely wrong. But yeah, I think with it being that road contest and the fact that now that Derek Carr has an arm again, they might actually be able to kind of make this a little bit more interesting. Ever so hesitantly, I'm going to take the under, but I would not be surprised if for any reason they do end up getting out ahead, that they just want to, bleed the clock a little bit, do whatever they got to do and lean on them. But yeah, I mean, I think this game is going to be closer than people expect. If Travis Etienne goes over this total for total yards, wouldn't shock me. But the rushing, that's the caveat, man. I don't think I can go for it.
Yeah, total yards, I would imagine he'd probably be somewhere in the 80s, I would think, at a minimum, maybe even more than that. But yeah, rushing, it's tough, man. So we went under on that one. So let's get to Trevor Lawrence here. We know he's playing, and we know that he has a brace on that left knee tonight. Now, his total, just for passing yards here, is set at 240 and a half in this game against the Saints in the Superdome, or the Caesars Superdome, or Caesars Dome, whatever they're calling it now. I don't know. Lawrence, as far as his season has gone, this is a similar situation with Etienne. He hit the total at the Colts, at home against the Texans, and at Buffalo. He missed 240 and a half against the Chiefs. He missed him against the Falcons, and then he missed it against the Colts. Again, in that second game, Jaguars were absolutely slaughtering the Colts, so there's no reason for him to pass. 240.5, it just on the surface, it seems high. But, man, when you consider Ridley set at 53.5, you and I like Christian Kirk quite a bit. Evan Engram is still there. Etienne's going to catch passes out of the backfield. So there is a lot to like about the Jaguars offense tonight. The total on this game, that's something I should have looked at right away, 40.5. So it's not expected to be a super high scoring game. Where do you land on Trevor Lawrence? 240.5 passing yards. My gut's telling me under, but I could be persuaded.
My gut's kind of telling me the same thing, man. Like, there's a lot of stuff that makes sense for him to be able to go over this total, but I just think about the fact that the New Orleans defense has done a pretty good job of keeping quarterbacks at bay. I mean, especially a guy that is being hampered by a knee injury right now, and I think if Calvin Ridley had a softer matchup and I felt more confident that he'd be able to, he being Trevor Lawrence, was able to, connect on super long bombs to be able to kind of up that total a little bit, I'd feel better about it. But that's the factor where I just don't know if that's going to happen. But all in all, I think they're going to have to throw a lot to be able to stay in this game by the time we get to the midway to the third quarter and on. So I'm going to go bold. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because it's fun, and that's what this is all about. I'm going with the over.
All right. I had the under picked, and now I just switched it to the over. So we're locked in on the over on Trevor Lawrence tonight. His counterpart for the New Orleans Saints. I'm in a dynasty league that inexplicably there are 2 teams rostering 4 quarterbacks, 2 teams rostering 3 quarterbacks, and my only quarterback in this league is Aaron Rodgers. So I have been playing quarterback. It's not even streaming. It's like quarterback roulette every single week. I've played Zach Wilson. I've played Jimmy Garoppolo. Derek Carr, somebody dropped this past week. Thank God. So I picked him up. I'm starting him tonight. I hope he's in for a nice little game. He's set at 235.5 passing yards tonight. This is a total that he has hit twice. The first game against the Titans and then the last game against the Texans. Now that's skewed a little bit because he obviously got hurt against the Packers, only threw for 103 yards, and he came back and played. I think we can pretty much assume that he was playing hurt against Tampa and New England. He didn't even top 190 yards in either of those games. So tonight, 235.5. He looks healthy. He's got Olave. He won't have Roschon Johnson tonight, but he'll have Rashid Shaheed as well. You look at Derek Carr, 235.5. If we're saying over on Lawrence, does that mean we should be saying over on Derek Carr, or are the two unrelated as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I think we got to go over on both. I'm here for this, man. This is a really awesome opportunity for Derek Carr to just absolutely go off. I think, the Jaguars defense has been low-key pretty good, but a place where you can exploit them a little bit is on those super deep bomb throws. That's something where they've been a little bit vulnerable. And when you have 2 dudes like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed that are just super good at those things, I think the available weapons to Derek Carr and the matchup that they have kind of sets itself up really nicely for him to, even if it only takes just connecting on a couple really long passes to really, up that total, I think he can do it. I think we just have to trust the really good stuff we saw from him last week, assume that he's back, baby, and just go for it, because 235 or whatever it's not so high that we have to be super nervous about it.
As true over bettors would say, all he's got to do is hit Rashid Shaheed for one pass, and then it's gravy the rest of the day. When I was doing this show a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, it might have been 2 or 3 weeks, I can't remember now. But Mike Shope from the Deep End podcast and WGR 550 in Buffalo, we were watching the game, and we took the over on DJ Moore receiving yardage, which was at 40.5. I mean, this is before he had really broken up. And then what happened? The first pass, it was a 42-yard completion. He was already over. And then Moore sailed way over. He went way over everything that night with 3 touchdowns, just absolutely crushed it. So we'll see what happens tonight with that. Okay, let's get into the actual game itself. Total points set at 40.5. Total points scored. Are we going more or less than 40.5 here? I would assume, since we've gone over with Carr and Lawrence, we should probably go over on the score. But I guess that's it's not necessarily related, Herms.
I just got to be 100% honest. This is the area of sports betting where I get a little bit hazy. I don't know. I'm going to defer to your judgment on that one.
You defer to me.
Yes.
The way that we've set this up, we're taking the over. We're taking over 40.5. Now, here's what we can do for the remainder. Now, to me, this is kind of a coin flip. Which team is going to score first? I don't know who's going to get the kickoff. I don't know who's going to win the toss. So for me, I usually go with the favorite here. That's the Saints by 1.5. I don't know if you have any inside stats on the Jacksonville Jaguars being this insane first quarter scoring team, but I don't. So I would just go Saints here unless you can convince me otherwise.
I know at least earlier in the season they kind of struggled to put up points in the first half a little bit. So, like I would just look at it from the standpoint of like the things we were talking about earlier with, Derek Carr just having two of these deep threat dudes. You know what I mean? Like I think in terms of which side has the most explosive players that can absolutely just torch somebody and break off like a huge chunk play, like that's the Saints. So I'm just going to, defer to the fact that they have those weapons available to them because that's the smart thing to do in my mind.
All right. Speaking of smart things here, the last question, which team is going to win the game? Now, oftentimes, and this was the case during the Chiefs and Broncos, as far as the points you get on the Bettorcast for answering these questions properly, if you pick the Chiefs to win and they won, you get 10 points. However, if you pick the Broncos to win and they won, I think you got like 50 or 60. Mike Shope and I picked the Bears to win against the Commanders when we were getting 40 points if we were right there, where you only got 10 of the Commanders. Now, tonight, it's the same. If you pick the Saints, you get 10 points. If you pick the Jaguars, you get 10 points. Saints currently are 1.5-point favorites. Do we just go with the Saints to win the game at home tonight?
I don't see why not.
Okay, we're locking it in. And that is our Bettorcast picks that we have tonight. Remember that you can join the cast by downloading the Bettorcast app in the App Store and Google Play. Those are just the 9 pregame questions. There's going to be a ton of questions that are going to be put out throughout the cast tonight, and hopefully you can participate, have a lot of fun. I know I'm going to be in there. It's going to be great. That is going to do it for the first hour of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show tonight here on the Better Sports Network. We've got a ton more to get to, though, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, let's find out where Herm stands on guys like Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Kendrick Bourne, Sam LaPorta. We're going to figure out his thoughts on and by the way, some dynasty nuggets to go along with these. Redraft analysis with a dynasty twist. So it's going to be great. My favorite drink. That is coming up on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour right here on the Better Sports Network. He is CH Herms from Draft Sharks. I am Eric Balkman from the FFPC. We'll be back right after this.
What can we expect for you out there on the track tonight?
Listen, I have a wife, 2 kids. I have, full-time jobs. I'm never nervous. I don't even know what that word means. Can you explain what nervous means? No. I'm ready to have fun. I've never done anything like this before. I got asked to be a part of this. This is fascinating. Like, it's so cool to just look around and see what goes on here. So I'm just excited to get out on the horse. And you want trash talk? Is that what you're asking me for? No trash talk. I hope everyone does well.
All right. Everyone's going to do well, but it has to be a winner. So give me your trifecta. Who's going to come in first, second, and third? Heat.
I will go Maria 1, me 2, Willie 3, Moose goes 4th.
Well, it's very simple. I won this event last year. I won my heat, and so the defending champ has to be the favorite. Now, that makes me a little nervous just because I feel like it's hard to repeat. There's a little pressure when you're the favorite. But that being said, I'm still optimistic.
So your heat, it's you,
yes.
Moose and Keith from Better Sports Network, and Willie Colon.
I think Keith might be my stiffest competition. And I asked for this because I actually recruited Keith, if you didn't know. So Keith, if you win, you're welcome.
Malusis is very good. I mean, he knows what he's doing. But I'm going to go with Maria.
Keith is waving to the crowd. He must pay attention because they're off. It's Mark Malusis going for the lead. Maria Marino on the outside. And now Keith Irizarry on the outside with speed. And they're 3 wide into the first turn. Woo! Mark Malusis is locked in for his life. 138-2. They're into the stretch. Sportscasters Derby 2. And still in front, Keith Irizarry. And now Mark Malusis is trying to squeeze on through.
Come on! Come on! Let's go! Come on, dig it! Dig it!
there is Eric. Keith, you did it all the way, wire to wire, over Mark Malusis.
Awesome! That was so cool. The champ is here. Keith, what was it like being out there? Adrenaline rush. You were doing the Instagram live, so there was no panic. You looked cool, calm, collected the whole time, and you won it.
I felt really comfortable. I did. Like, I know you were joking with me before. Are you nervous? Are you whatever? What are you? David, the driver, was awesome. He's like, we're gonna win this. I said, all right, let's win this. And he said, let's go. Yeah, I just felt really comfortable. I did. It was fun. We're in the lead. I got Maria Marino on the right side of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna beat us, right? And then out of nowhere, you see Moose coming up this way, and we feel him breathing down our neck. And I'm like,
Moose on the loose. Watch out.
Moose was definitely on the loose, and we just got Moose by a neck, a nose, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but again, all of this for a great cause, and it was absolutely awesome to do this. It was cool.
All right, Keith, congratulations, and no matter what, you could always hold this over Moose's head.
Yeah!
Who are you? I am Belki Bartolomeusz.
Rocking our way through a Thursday night here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. I am Eric Balkman from the HSFF Hour, the road of his high stakes lowdown on the FFPC. He is CH Herms from DraftSharks.com. Follow him on the X at Herms NFL. Herms, let's do this before we get into where you stand on all these players. Let's help out Nicholas, who's in the YouTube chat hanging out tonight, saying he's got a quarterback problem this week. I'm of the opinion, I don't think he has a problem. I think this is a good problem to have. He's got Jordan Love and he's got Geno Smith. Now, on the surface, I say, okay, Geno Smith at home against the Cardinals. Yeah, I'm going to play him over Love, who has been struggling, and he goes out to the Mile High City to take on the Broncos, which their defense is no good. Does the fact that he has Christian Watson as his number 3 receiver tilt the tables for you at all to say, you know what, I'm going to play Love over Geno Smith?
It would if we had seen a little bit more from Christian Watson since he came back from injury. I understand, like the Denver matchup is great. It is literally the best matchup for everybody, whether you play receiver, quarterback, running back, whatever you do. But I got to roll with my man Geno, man. Like the Cardinals are, it's softer, and for as good of a spot as it is for all of the Packers, I got to see it from Jordan Love. I got to see him recapture that early season magic before I feel like super confident going back to it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? Because again, Broncos. But I got to go with what have you done for me lately? And Geno has done just a little bit more for us.
This is a great get-right game for Green Bay, and I think that you can make a case that because you have that stacking capability to play Love. I'm the biggest Packers fan on BSN, so I feel comfortable in saying that I would still play Geno Smith over Jordan Love. Now here's the thing. I think if you were, let's say this is a national contest, like let's say it's a Fantasy Pros Championship or an FFPC main event, and you want to pile up some points, then yeah, maybe you can make the case for Love and Watson. Thank you. However, you're not playing for any of the big cash yet. I mean, like you want to make sure you're stacking in that championship round. That certainly helps you. Right now, I think you're just trying to advance, and especially if this is a closed 12-team league where you're just trying to beat 12 other people and stacking really doesn't matter that whole lot. Then I would definitely play Geno Smith. So I'm going to go with Geno Smith here over Jordan Love. Herms is saying Geno Smith as well. Chris Lude tonight in the YouTube chat, one of our good friends here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. He is playing Jared Goff over Trevor Lawrence tonight. I think you can make the case for that. A somewhat hobbled Trevor Lawrence tonight going up against the Saints defense. Goff is on the road in Baltimore. You think that's the right choice, Goff over Lawrence this week?
I mean, we are talking about road Jared Goff, which has always been a little bit of a risky proposition, but he kind of debunked a little bit of that against the Buccaneers this past weekend. So, I mean, credit where credit's due, man. Credit where credit's due. He was looking good. But, yeah, in a world where Trevor Lawrence was fully healthy, I would say Lawrence, but just because of the knee factor, because of all of that, I'm comfortable enough rolling with Goff.
I think that's the way I would play it too. Even though it'd be fun to watch Lawrence tonight and root for him on Thursday Night Football, but I'm going to roll with Jared Goff as well. So Chris Lude, we agree with those picks. Okay, let's get into where do you stand on Chris? CH. Where do you stand on Zack Evans? We kind of got your dynasty perspective on this guy in the first hour, but this weekend, knowing that Sean McVay said this is going to be a competition for carries situation. They have Darrell Henderson, Royce Freeman. Who's the other cat that they just picked? Miles Gaskin, right? Yeah. Is on that team as well. Man, it's like I think it's going to be Evans, but at the same time, I really don't want to roll with a guy that could be splitting carries with 2 or maybe even 3 other running backs.
You know, I tweeted this. I think it was either last night or the night before. But you, the fantasy manager out there, have the option to just play none of them and wait until we find out who's going to be good. I am all for, trying to, plant your flag and, put whatever research you can behind any take that you have. Because, I mean, that's the business that I'm in, to go through research things and try to give people quality advice. But, the most responsible thing that I feel like I can do is just say, shrug, I don't know, and just not really give anything super. I think if you have to play one of them, like in this context, you have to play one of them, I would prefer Zack Evans because I think he's a very talented player. I do. But would it shock me if somebody like Darrell Henderson ends up getting the majority of the touches because he is a guy that has been a starting running back for Sean McVay on this team in this offense before? No, it wouldn't shock me at all. Royce Freeman, he's been on the roster the entire time. Now, mind you, mostly just doing like special team stuff, but like he's been around. He's a big dude. He can kind of thump, between the gaps and stuff. It honestly could be any one of them. But yeah, if you had to pick one, it's Evans. But if you don't have to pick one, pick none of them.
Yeah, wait. I think you're spot on there. Like the only guy I would consider is Evans. Here's the thing. My approach this week for the Rams running backs and going forward, I tried to acquire pieces of it, right? Like I picked up Royce Freeman in a couple of leagues. I don't know if I got Henderson at all. I should really check on that. And Evans was taken in a lot. I mean, I did put in for him. But I've spent a lot of my free agent bidding budget, so I probably missed on him in a lot of leagues. He is the only guy that you can make a case for starting this week. You cannot make a case for starting anybody else. You can make a case for acquiring all of these guys if you have the roster space. And I know with 6 teams on bye, that's a little bit of a crunch. But we, like Herm said, you got to wait. You got to see this thing flesh out, and we'll have an answer on this soon enough. Staying at the same position, Aaron freaking Jones. Where do you stand on this guy? A guy who was crazy good week 1, pulls the hammy, and it's been a disaster of a season since then. And the Packers, who are notoriously cautious as far as their medical staff goes, we've seen basically like a little blip from him a couple of weeks ago against Detroit, and that was it. He was out again last week. There's still I think he plays this week, but I thought he would play last week against Vegas, and that didn't happen. Where do you stand on Aaron Jones this week and beyond? Because he's been a frustrating guy to have on your roster so far, Herms.
He has been super frustrating, and honestly, so has just the structure of the Packers' run game. Like, I know you know this well. Like, the way that they're just, like, scheming up a lot of those running backs, like, they're not opening enough lanes for these guys to really go anywhere. I mean, like, A.J. Dillon has not looked very good running in relief. Now, I mean, he was actually, like, low-key pretty good against the Raiders, but prior to that, he had just been, like, running into walls, just, like, not really having a lot going for him. I empathize as a Steelers fan. I know what it feels like to watch a run offense just not find anything for any of their players, but the times that it actually has looked competent this year are the times that Aaron Jones has been fully healthy. He's an incredibly talented player with a long track record of consistency throughout his career. So I'd be willing to hold out on him and just like hope that the talent overcomes the situation a little bit. But I think if you could make some sort of move to get somebody else, like, don't sell him for anything. You know, like if it's just one of those things where you maybe want to, dip down a tier at running back and like pick up another spare part that you can throw into your lineup or something like that, like maybe go for it. But the odds of that happening aren't going to be that good because he hasn't really played. So anybody that you're going to send him to is probably not going to be enthusiastic to acquire him. So like, I think you're kind of just stuck and you just have to roll with it if you can. And I think it will pay off.
It's one of those things where, you can't really get proper value for him right now in a trade. And I think that the thing is even when you start him, Herms, like at this point, I'm nervous, like the slightest little hammy, I'm like, oh, he's done for the game. And he's not a young man anymore when it comes to NFL running back age. That's another thing that scares me. But at this point, you're kind of just married to it, and you gotta roll with the punches as it is. Go back to the YouTube chat right now here real quick. Sports Spotlight has a conundrum, and kickoff is just minutes away. Hopefully we can help him. Christian Kirk, Marquise Brown, or Zay Flowers. I would be benching Zay Flowers full PPR in this.
Yeah, of all those dudes, probably. Yeah, no, because I mean the Bears, the Lions defense, super good, and like I know road matchup, Baltimore's going to have that going for them, but like it's a tough draw for Zay, man. Whereas like I mean I think Marquise, but just shout out. Marquise Brown has been super good so far this year, even without Kyler Murray. Like, I think people who invested in him, like, later on in drafts, like, you are just, like, rolling in the dough now because he's only going to get better once Kyler Murray comes back. So, like, yeah, everything we said about Kirk is true, and just, like, Marquise Brown is dat boy 100%.
Marquise Brown already 3 touchdowns on the season. He hasn't hit 100 yards yet, but been really consistent for full PPR. 6 for 54, 5 for 61, 7 for 96, 4 for 61. Been really consistent, and sometimes that's what you're looking for in a second wide receiver. And he still does have that upside, that game breaking upside. So hopefully that works out for you. Sports Spotlight. All right, Puka Nacua. Cooper Kupp is back, and Nacua in that first game back still crushed it. The second game back, which was last week, I feel like he had the opportunity for another big game, a couple of touchdowns he was this close to. It ended up being kind of a fantasy dud performance. But where do you stand on Puka Nacua the rest of the way? I'm kind of all in on this guy. I think that even with Kupp back, I think Nacua is still going to be a borderline top 15, top 20 guy the remainder of the season, Herms.
I completely agree. And this is a player that, I don't like to get caught up in hype trains. Like, I've been burned from that in the past. I try not to overreact to certain things, but just based off of the route responsibilities that they trusted him with right out of the gate and his ability to execute playing in what was essentially the Cooper Kupp role. I mean, that says a lot, dude. That really does. And now that they have their full complement of these receivers back, I think one of the things that we're going to see as time goes along, if we remember back to that little window between like 2017 to 2019, where it was Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Brandon Cooks just going out there and doing that crazy explosive stuff. Some of the really big successes that this offense had, shout out Sean McVay for just always scheming up awesome stuff, is that Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods ran a lot of congruent routes, a lot of things, meshing together, confusing the defenses a little bit, and then just uncorking Brandon Cooks for like a 14+ yard A-dot. If he's open, you just like eat the ball downfield and see what happens there. They have all of the weapons in place now to replicate that exact thing, with Tutu Atwell being that deep play threat that is like low-key been pretty good so far this year, and Puka Nacua is slotting in very nicely to play like a Robert Woods used to during like the height of this offense. And we also think about the fact that Robert Woods for a long time there used to run like a lot of like sweeps and reverses and stuff, and Puka Nacua is a guy that I think over his last couple of years in college at BYU saw somewhere between, I can't remember off the top of my head, it was like 30 or 35 carries as a runner out of the backfield, and also like punched in some rushing touchdowns and stuff. So he has this versatility to be able to bring a dimension to this Rams offense that they have not had in a very long time. So I'm very, very excited about it. I'm not worried about the fact that Cooper Kupp is back. I'm not worried about the fact that Puka Nacua, did kind of, drop off a little bit. He is just so absurdly talented and fits into an offense that already has a blueprint to work off of to deploy players responsibly and make everybody feast.
and Nacua, I don't know how he does it. I mean, he's not the most athletic guy in the world. He's obviously got some competition for targets with Kupp and Higbee as well on that squad. But he's getting it done, and he's just a football player. And sometimes football players can get it done. He continues to get it done. Jaguars are getting it done right now. A 21-yard pass to Evan Engram, complete. Etienne had a 15-yard catch right after that, and Trevor Lawrence picking up a first down with a 9-yard run up the middle on 2nd and 6. So the Jaguars are in business here in New Orleans territory. I'm trying to find out exactly what yard line they're at. They're at the New Orleans 26. So they're knocking on the door of the red zone right now. We'll give you more updates as the game goes on here. Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I'm saying it like there was an old SNL sketch where Daryl Hammond played Tim Russert on Meet the Press, and he was interviewing Hillary Clinton. And every time he addressed Hillary Clinton with a question, he always said, Hillary Rodham Clinton. And, over and over again, it got pretty funny. And finally, Hillary Clinton was played by Anna Gasteyer, said, you say it like I was naughty at school. And I'm going to say this like he's been naughty at school because he's been naughty for fantasy lineups this year. Jaxon Smith-Njigba. What's going on with this guy? Why is he not crushing it? Is it just simply him being a rookie? Is it the fact that Metcalf and Lockett are there? Is he going to turn it on at the end of the season? Herms, where do you stand on Jaxon Smith-Njigba?
I recently wrote about him in my latest edition of the Dynasty Player Spotlight over there at Draft Sharks. I'm trying to make sure I have my number correct so that I don't say something wrong. But like the hugest thing that he's had working against him is the fact that, like, honestly, here we go. Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. 49% of the time through prior to week 6, the Seahawks ran either 12 or 13 personnel, which, for those of you who don't know what that is out there, 12 personnel is having 2 tight ends out on the field at the same time. 13 personnel is having 3 tight ends out there on the field. And it's like, why are they playing so many tight ends on the field constantly? Well, it's because they had both of their starting offensive tackles get knocked out of week 1 against the Rams, and they've had their 2 interior guards banged up with various injuries as well. Their offensive line has been in shambles, and they've had to throw out blocking tight ends to keep Geno Smith upright. And when you're playing in 12 and 13 personnel, that just means 1 fewer receiver is on the field on a given play. In 12 personnel schemes, you're only starting 2 wide receivers out there in the formation, and that has predominantly been Metcalf and Lockett, because why would you throw somebody like JSN, who ran the vast majority of his routes at Ohio State out of the slot, onto the field in those packages? You just wouldn't. There's no reason. He's not known for his blocking ability. So injuries to the offensive line have made a tangible impact on JSN seeing the field. But now that they're starting to get a little bit healthier, they got Charles Cross back into the lineup for this past week, and now we're starting to see JSN had a much higher snap share last week against the Bengals. He ran significantly more routes, and his ADOT bumped up to, I think it was 7.2. Like, it's not a huge difference, but they're starting to get him deeper shots down the field a little bit. So I think as the team continues to get healthier and they're able to deploy more of those 3 wide receiver sets, things will work out for them. Remember, Shane Waldron does come from the Sean McVay coaching tree. He was there in LA while Zach Taylor, now current Bengals head coach, was, doing some offensive coordinating stuff. And the Bengals and the Rams are teams that routinely throw 11 personnel, aka 3 wide receiver sets, out at like league high rates. I think as time goes along, the intent for this offense, hypothetically, is for them to get all these guys out there, because why would you spend a first-round pick on JSN if you're not going to throw him out there more? So it's a matter of just being patient and looking at the signs that things will get better. Health sucks. Injuries suck. It's not his fault.
Right. Yeah, and just keep those tackles healthy. Lucas and Cross for Seattle. That's going to help it as well. Update from the game. Little shovel pass from Trevor Lawrence to Jamal Agnew gets the Jaguars down to the 2-yard line, where Travis Etienne rushes it in. So if you had Travis Etienne scoring the Jaguars' first touchdown on the Bettorcast, I did not, then congratulations to you, because you got that right. Brandon McManus, extra point is good. 7-0. Jacksonville Jaguars. Saints are going to get the kickoff coming up after the break. 9:44 to go in the first quarter, as our attention focuses back to where do you stand? Quentin Johnston. This is another player, another rookie receiver here. This is 3 straight rookie receivers I'm asking you about. But Quentin Johnston, man, I'll be honest with you. I was kind of down on this guy at the start of the season. I didn't necessarily know if he would be a big boom guy as an NFL player, and it's certainly too early to write him off as a bust. But what's been frustrating for me is he came into a situation where he needed to get a Mike Williams or a Keenan Allen injury. He has gotten a Mike Williams season-ending injury, and this dude is just nowhere to be found. It's Joshua Palmer, it's Keenan Allen, it's Eckler, but no Quentin Johnston. Is there enough time in the season for this guy to turn it around where he could still be fantasy worthy for you down the stretch, or has the ship sailed on this guy for 2023 at least?
I mean, theoretically, it's possible, but, coming off of the bye week, primetime football, and he only sees 2 targets for 0 catches against Dallas, it's like, bro, what are you doing? What's going on? And I think back to the pre-draft period, like, I'm with you. I was not very high on him. When we think about the big 4, those guys that got drafted in the first round, the JSM we just talked about, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, like, I had Quentin Johnston ranked 4th out of that group. I think he is a very large guy. He looks to be that prototypical X-type receiver, but a lot of the dominance that he had in college was on a lot shorter routes, making things happen after the catch. He does not have the route running technical skills, nor the ability to just go up there and get those 50-50 balls that a guy his size should. And that was something that I think he might be able to develop as time goes along, but he was always a little bit more of a project. And also, I'm a little bit wary of Big 12 wide receivers as it is. We've seen a lot of those guys come into the league and do a whole lot of nothing, because that's a conference where, it is just a lot of aerial attacks back and forth all the time. And those receiving numbers from that conference in college get a little bit inflated just because of how the competition tends to play out. So I don't really care for him the rest of this year, but I think as time goes along, he might develop into something, but my hopes weren't that high to begin with. I didn't draft him anywhere, dynasty redraft, any of
both. Williams and Allen are under contract next year with the Chargers, but their cap numbers are massive. So they either will be cut or they're going to have to restructure. And don't forget about Joshua Palmer there as well. So, yeah, I think Johnston is the type of guy, if you can stash him on your roster in your dynasty league, you'll see what can happen there. But, man, it's not been a great start for him. Let's talk about Diontae Johnson for your beloved Pittsburgh Steelers here. Coming off IR this week, it looks like he's going to be ready to go. We already kind of talked about this with Pat Freiermuth. Where do you stand on Diontae Johnson starting him this first week off IR? Wheels up or little trepidation? How do you feel about him?
I am starting him in a handful of leagues, mostly because I have to, but also just because when he's healthy and he's out there, that's who gets the vast majority of the targets in the Steelers offense. They hyper-focus on getting Diontae Johnson the ball. He is the centerpiece of that attack, and I just have to imagine that he'll find a way to volume his way to relevance, because I don't know that there's going to be a lot of big plays. It usually takes until the end of the third quarter for the Steelers offense to show life of any kind. And some of the best football I've ever watched. It's a beautiful time. But yeah, I mean, you have to fall back on the Diontae Johnson track record of just him being a volume monster. I don't know that it's going to pay off in huge spike weeks. I don't know if he's going to score a touchdown again this year either. We're still waiting on him to score a touchdown. The last touchdown that he caught was from Ben Roethlisberger. Wow. So
that is cool. That is crazy. That's I don't know if that's the craziest stat I've heard in 2023, but it's right up there. The last, holy God.
It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. We're still waiting. And for how just terrible this offense has been, I think that streak might continue. But yeah, I'm just it's like that gif of the dog sipping the little teacup in that burning room that's on fire. This is fine. That's just me every Sunday watching the Steelers.
Let's okay. So I was upset about Kendrick Bourne. So this past year, not this past year, this past September after week 1, I saw what Kendrick Bourne did against the Eagles secondary, pretty talented Eagles secondary, James Bradbury, so on and so forth. And Mac Jones had, tractor beams locked on with Kendrick Bourne that first game. I'm like, God, maybe real offensive coordinator or just an offensive coordinator in general, New England, Bill O'Brien, maybe things are turning up. So I spent, just for lack of a better term, an ass load of money on Kendrick Bourne out of my fab budget to try to acquire him. And I got him in a bunch of leagues. And I still have him in a couple leagues, but it's kind of fallen off. And then I was upset I didn't have him this past week as he goes 10 catches for whatever it was, 86 yards, I think, this past week against the Raiders. And then he got picked up again in some of my other leagues where I dropped him in. So where do you stand on Kendrick Bourne? Because it's certainly frustrating for a guy to be so dominant in the passing game on 2 weeks and then basically just disappear in the others. Bourne is a maddening guy to own in redraft leagues where you got to figure out if this is going to be his week or not, Herms.
It's terrifying, and I don't like doing it, and you can't make me do it. No, seriously, though, he is currently the best wide receiver on his team and also the healthiest, because if I recall, Juju Smith-Schuster, on top of just like the knee injury that he's been dealing with for like well over like a month and a half now, concussion. The rookie Demario Douglas also has a concussion going on. Devontae Parker, the perpetually injured wide receiver, and also Hunter Henry still on the injury report. So, like, just as long as Kendrick Bourne continues to have the best ability, which is availability, he will have room to be in people's lineups. Because honestly, outside of just tossing those, dump offs into the backfield to Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott, where else does Mac Jones have to throw it to? Where else? It's Kendrick Bourne. That's it. It's the only thing that's working. So, I think the laser beam, tractor beam, like you're talking about, is because, when he looks downfield, when Mac Jones looks downfield every single snap, basically, and looks for the guy wearing the same color uniform as him, the only person who ever appears remotely open is that Kendrick Bourne.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Because, he's fast. He can torch dudes, he low key, pretty sneaky good football player too. But dude, as long as he continues to be the healthiest, just go with it.
Well, and then the other thing I think that I was wrong on is that Eagles secondary turned out to be not as great as I thought it was going to be this year. So that skewed it a little bit as well. Moving on to tight end, Sam LaPorta. My God. I have been blown away, even though I had this guy in a ton of redraft leagues and I drafted him usually as a backup. Towards the end of drafting season, I was drafting him as a starter. Even I didn't expect this kind of consistency, this kind of production. He's been awesome. I got a dynasty trade offer for Mark Andrews. If I trade LaPorta, I would be getting Mark Andrews straight up. I turned it down. Sky's the limit for LaPorta. He is taking advantage of being the second guy receiving option in this offense behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he's running with it. LaPorta's been awesome. Where do you stand on him for dynasty?
So I recently wrote a column about him as well, because I too have been very thrilled. And, just through the first, 5 games of his career, now mind you, he's played more than 5 games, but this is at the time that I wrote it. He was tied for first in receiving touchdowns, first in PPR points, second in receptions, and tied for third in receiving yards among all rookie tight ends in history since the year 2000. Okay, that's how good he was doing among rookie tight ends since the year 2000. In each of those areas, he compared favorably statistically from to Aaron Hernandez, only the football stuff, I promise, Kyle Pitts, and Jordan Reed back in the day when he was, healthy enough to be balling out there for the Commanders. So if we're talking about a guy who immediately walks in and compares to those type of dudes, yeah, we're talking about like a top 3, top 4 dynasty tight end. But I tried to, kind of rein it in a little bit and do a fun Q&A session with my fellow Draft Sharks writers and, ask them in the article, hey, where would you kind of, rank him among these other guys? And the consensus opinion that we came to the conclusion of, as a staff was, if you have Sam LaPorta, but you get an offer for one of the super elite dudes like a Kelsey, like an Andrews right now, and you're in that window to win that title right now, you can justify flipping him. But if you're if you're not one of those top 1 or 2 teams in your league or whatever, if you're anywhere below that in your standings, just feel blessed. Hold on to him, because I think you have found a absolute diamond in the rough, if we call the second round of rookie drafts the rough. But either way, it's incredible. I am all on board with this. And thankfully, we were, pat ourselves on the back a little bit. We wrote about Sam LaPorta as a guy that you should target at the end of your drafts this year over at draftsharks.com. So we were kind of, part of the wave a little bit. But even then, still way far above and beyond even what we expected. This dude is a absolute stud.
It kind of works out that, Jameson Williams has let a lot of people down so far in his career, and LaPorta is taking advantage of not only that, but the injuries to David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, where he is a focal point in this passing game week in and week out. He's been tremendous. Blake Grupe just kicked a beautiful 51-yard kick, perfectly straight. The problem was he kicked it from the right hash. It never turned. It was no good, wide right. It was such a perfect, beautiful kick from 51 yards out, never curved in. So still 7-0, Jacksonville taking over on their own 41, 5:16 to go in the first quarter. Hanging out. The Bettorcast is just absolutely lit tonight. We got a ton of people in there having a lot of fun. Last thing I want to get to before our break here, let's talk about another tight end here. I'm not even going to set you up for this. All I have to do is say Kyle Pitts, and then everybody has their own personal feelings on this guy. The ups, the downs, I cannot tell you, and I've been working for the FFPC now for a decade and a half. I cannot, off the top of my head, remember a guy that has been so polarizing and has been on such a roller coaster from year to year, month to month, week to week production than Kyle Pitts. I'll tell you this. You know what it reminds me of, Herms, is Kevin Bacon's speech in A Few Good Men, where he's talking about Tom Cruise is going to try to dazzle you with a magic show. It won't have any evidence, but it will be entertaining. You may not win many fantasy football games with Kyle Pitts, but it will be entertaining. And it has been entertaining following this guy's career. I don't know what to make of him at this point, though.
I'm done with the Kyle Pitts thing. I can't do it, man. I can't. Like, I barely had any shares to begin with because the hype we being the fantasy football community, treated him with this Jordan-esque hype of being the savior of the tight end position for the next decade. The heir apparent to Travis Kelce, he will be the GOAT forever until he retires, blah, 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 blah. So I never took him in any of my rookie drafts. And then I've taken over a couple, orphan dynasty teams here and there. And on each of them, where I've ended up with a share of Kyle Pitts, I've just immediately traded him away. I still have one share and I'm really annoyed about it and I can't wait to get rid of it because here is the God's honest truth. We can be mad at Arthur Smith and the offense that he runs in Atlanta all we want. But the truth of the matter is they're low key pretty good. He wins enough games to keep his job every single year. And the entire NFC South right now is rebuilding, pretty much all of those teams. So the bar for Arthur Smith to not get fired is it's pretty low, man. And I know people talk about the fact that we'll just wait till they replace Desmond Ridder and get in a real quarterback in there. Yes, that will help. That some of those throws, especially the higher A-dot throws, are going to be ones that will connect a little bit more often for both Kyle Pitts and Drake London, because these are dudes that both get, used downfield more often than not. But what won't change is how very little they throw to begin with. If you look at Atlanta's pass rate over expectation, they are within the bottom of the league. I'm pretty sure either last or second to last. They are just very, very run heavy. Arthur Smith has to go before you can even start to feel super, super confident about Kyle Pitts. And it may take him getting his fifth-year option declined and moving on to another team for us to ever see this pay off. So what is that going to be? Not 2024, not 2025, maybe 2026. And yes, he's still young. He still has all this time. If you look at the average breakout age of tight ends, it's typically somewhere around 26, 27 years old. Kyle Pitts is still uber young. I believe, if I recall off the top of my head, outside of Brock Bowers out of Georgia, he is younger than every other tight end that's going to be declaring for the NFL draft this coming year. He's crazy. Still that young. It's awesome. He has this going for him, but playing that waiting game is just something I'm sick of doing. I can't. I'm done. I will never do it. You can't make me do it. Kyle Pitts it's so irritating.
Right. And I think the thing is if that's the plan and that's the timeline, then you're better off cashing in what you can on him. But then maybe down the road, if we're still waiting for this to pop in and for the light to come on with Pitts and the offense to start catering towards his talents, maybe you can get him in on your roster cheap the year before that happens. That's possible. But we'll be following this situation. Listen, Kyle Pitts is going to be a legend rightly or wrongly, good or bad in the FFPC tight end premium scoring format. We got a situation here. The Jaguars get the ball back after that missed field goal. Trevor Lawrence hits Christian Kirk for roughly about a 20-yard pass. Kirk fumbles on the play. The Saints recover and are promptly going 3-and-out as they are punting now 4th and 6 from their own roughly 45-yard line. Jaguars about to get the ball back. We are about to come back from break here. It is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Eric Balkman from the FFPC. CH Herms from DraftSharks.com. We're going to talk about those starts and sits you've sent to us coming back right here exclusively on BSN.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, but they let him be the quarterback for a long time, too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl.
And
when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game.
Yeah.
That they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky, is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yards go.
We got about 17 minutes left until we turn things over to the best of the Better Sports Network and Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime. Welcome into Fantasy Football Night in America. Eric Balkman from the FFPC, CH Herms from DraftSharks.com. Follow him on the X at Herms NFL. Another development in this game. Crazy stuff. So the Jaguars were receiving the punt. Jamal Agnew was. And it looked like his own man. I couldn't tell if he got blocked into him or if he ran into him. But either way, Agnew never had a chance of catching the punt because it hit his own man. The Saints recovered on the play. And I believe it is going to be Saints ball on the Jacksonville 17. And it is indeed, as they are handing it off here on first down, are the Saints. Is that Jamal Williams who just I think that was. We had a Jamal Williams sighting. Back and better than ever, about a 3 or 4 yard game on first down. Massive turnovers going on here in this game. We'll keep you posted on that. Okay, let's get into some start sits questions here for you, Herms. Actually, before I do that, I should remind everybody, and I do this every week, and I should remember, and I forgot. There is such thing a such thing called the Fantasy Alarm All-Pro subscription. Let me tell you about it. You can get it right now. You can unlock all the content for sports, including annual draft guides, one-on-one expert access in Discord. You can analyze your matchups and trends in your leagues with League Sync, lineup generator integrated with Fanjections, daily and weekly rankings, the value of all position coaches, waiver wire, ownership percentages, projection stats and tools, build better lineups guarantee. Get access to everything Fantasy Alarm offers all year. FantasyAlarm.com/win. FantasyAlarm/win. First and goal now for the Saints as they have the ball on the Jacksonville 6-yard line. I want to get into we'll lead things off with quarterbacks here, Herms. So how about the two guys squaring off in Denver this week, Jordan Love or Russell Wilson? You can only play one of them. I like both these guys as a start this week, but I would lean towards Jordan Love over Russell Wilson.
I know that the last time we saw Russell Wilson, it was like super bad. And I do know that Russell Wilson has played 3 games against super cakewalk matchups, but I can't get on board with the Jordan Love until, because for as bad as Russell Wilson was the last time we saw him, we haven't seen Jordan Love be good for like multiple weeks. The dude just keeps throwing interceptions. Like, it's a toss-up. I don't say this with any semblance of like confidence that one guy is way over the other. So just to be very clear, I'm picking Russell Wilson, but the margin is like razor thin.
Like I said, I think that I'm actually starting both these guys in different leagues this week. So I like both of them this week. I'd lean towards Love. I totally understand why you would not want to start Love this week. And certainly you could go with Russell Wilson instead. Rashid Shaheed almost made an incredible catch. He was just out of bounds. He only got 1 foot in at the back of the end zone. It looked like he was pulling down a rebound from Derek Carr. So it is 3rd and goal from the 5 for the New Orleans Saints here. This one I threw in just for you. Running back decision. Let's say you can only play one Steelers running back this week. Is it Najee Harris or is it Jaylen Warren? And the Steelers have this week I should know this. The Rams, in Los Angeles. Yeah. You can only play one. Who's it going to be?
Jaylen Warren has outscored Najee Harris in PPR, I think, every week so far. So it's frustrating because mostly every time Najee Harris gets the ball, they do it in these bunched single back formations, and he just runs directly into a wall. They're not scheming Najee open into space that like the same way that Matt Canada has seemingly preferred to do with Jaylen Warren. Anytime Jaylen Warren breaks off these huge plays and people watch it, they're just like, see, he's the more explosive player. That's just because Warren is out there in shotgun where they spread everybody out. Everything's super fanned out. He's not seeing these same stacked boxes that Najee is seeing. Of course, it's going to be easier for him to break off these bigger plays because he's just simply not seeing as many bodies come after him, especially when they, send those guards out and they do those, zone running things and stuff too. So just based off of their usage, you have to go with Jaylen Warren because he's the only one that gets to see daylight ever.
It seems weird to say it, but I'm with you. I mean, I've been playing Warren as a flex. Obviously, not last week when he was on bye, but before that, I had been flexing Jaylen Warren out, and he's the play over Najee Harris this week. It stinks, but it's what you got to do. 3rd and goal, the Saints failed. Drew Brees. No, not Drew Brees. Derek Carr. My God. Derek Carr throws a pass. It hits the Jacksonville cornerback in the back of the head on a back shoulder fade to Michael Thomas. Incomplete. Blake Grupe redeems himself with a 23-yard field goal. Yes. 1:26 to go in the first quarter. It is Jacksonville 7, New Orleans 3, with the Saints getting ready to kick off to the Jacksonville Jaguars. KJ Osborne or Rashee Rice this week. These two players are interesting for a couple of different reasons. Rice, because he's been coming on. Because it seems like if there's any receiver that Patrick Mahomes has taken a shine to, it just might be Rashee Rice. And obviously KJ Osborne is interesting because of the injury to Justin Jefferson. Now Osborne essentially is the number 2 receiver, probably the number 3 passing option on that offense behind Addison and Hawkinson. Osborne is at home, but it's against the Niners on Monday Night Football. Rashee Rice is at home against the Los Angeles Chargers. Herms, do you like the matchup better for Rice? Is that enough for you to start him over Osborne? Or is Osborne still the play here, given that Kirk Cousins is going to be throwing the ball a lot?
I'm really torn on this one because I assume at some point Andy Reid is going to give Rashee Rice a more full complement of snaps. Because when we look at Rashee Rice on just a per target basis, he's super efficient. He has been the best receiver for the Chiefs, but they just only get him out there in certain packages, and it's like super frustrating. So I think, just answering it for this week only, I'm going to go with KJ Osborne, because as long as Justin Jefferson's going to be out, it's going to be really awesome for Osborne and Jordan Addison just to be able to feast. But like long-term outlook, I'm still really buying in on the Rashee Rice thing, because I think just like ultimately the cream rises to the top, man. He is the best receiver that they have on this team. I'm all for it. Like if he's out there on your waiver wire for some reason, stash him. Keep Rashee Rice tucked away. I wouldn't necessarily feel super comfortable deploying him this week, but like, yeah, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Osborne.
I'm kind of with you on this one. I think I would go with Osborne as well over Rashee Rice. Just the volume to me is I trust Osborne's role a lot more than Rice, even though the poor matchup. Jamal Agnew on that punt where his own man crashed into him. Injury to insult here, as Agnew now being evaluated for a concussion on that play, which would really stink for the Jaguars. Michael Mayer or David Njoku at tight end. Njoku, the guy who is fighting through facial burns these last couple of weeks, he goes to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Michael Mayer at home at Soldier Field against the Chicago Bears. Both of these are pretty good matchups for these players. Mayer's been coming on, though, lately, at least early on in games, and then for whatever reason, the Raiders seem to go away from him. I know Davante Adams was complaining about how many targets he's been seeing lately, so I would imagine squeaky wheel going to get the grease there. Is that enough for you to say, yeah, Njoku's the play here over Mayer?
I think I still got to go with Mayer because I don't know who's going to play quarterback for the Browns this week. Deshaun Watson his shoulder.
Hold on, just real quick on that. Do we know who's playing quarterback for the Raiders? I mean, is it going to be Hoyer or is it going to be O'Connell? Like, we don't know that either, right?
We don't know that either, but that second half of that game that Brian Hoyer played, like they still looked Michael Mayer's way a lot. So just because he already has seen a half of football without Jimmy Garoppolo and it still worked out really well for him, like I'm at least comfortable working with that sample size. But like, yeah, dude, like as long as Deshaun Watson's like throwing shoulder continues to bother him, it's just weird, man. And even when Deshaun Watson's been healthy, like Njoku has had an okay scoring floor, but like he's not really seeing more than like 4 or 5 targets in a game. And the really cool thing about Michael Mayer's breakout this past weekend against the Patriots was the fact that, like, because prior to that game, the only Raiders primary pass catcher that had seen 5 or more targets in a game were Jacoby Myers and Davante Adams. It was like super hyper focused between throwing to them and dumping it back off to Josh Jacobs. So the fact that somebody else cracked through and saw more than 5 targets in a game for the first time is huge. Yeah. And, Michael Mayer, somebody that, like, I thought, like, really good NFL tight end prospect. I think for fantasy purposes, I had him a little bit lower in my, initial rookie rankings because he's not like a stellar pass catcher type player. He's a little bit more of like he has good hands, but he's also really good at blocking. He's a little bit more prototypical for like actual football usage, but I digress. He's coming on more. We saw Brian Hoyer continue to throw to him, and I got to ride the hot hand. I think it becomes a lot closer to me if we find out that Deshaun Watson ends up playing.
I think the other thing to keep in mind, and I always say this all the time, I know he's a young tight end and he's a rookie. Football, NFL, it's a young man's game. If you are a skill position player, and not saying that Njoku is old by any means, but we kind of know where he is. There's a little bit of excitement of starting Michael Mayer, and certainly the way he's trending would make you more likely to put him in the lineup as well. How about this one? Here's a fun flex one. Both of these players are at home against the Cleveland Browns. You can only play Zach Moss or Josh Downs, full PPR, Herms. Which one do you go with here?
Man, like I want to say Josh Downs because he's been like super impressive of late. He's definitely seeing a lot of the target work, but I also don't want to. I don't want to just fully bet on like this week is the week that Jonathan Taylor is finally going to get the workload again.
Yeah,
because they're ramping him up. It's something that I think the Athletics' Diana Rossini tweeted about it. Like right before Jonathan Taylor made his season debut, that Indianapolis was going to be conservative bringing him back because like not only was he placed on IR, like they said the back, but part of it was a little bit of the contract dispute. But mind you, he did have ankle surgery on that ankle that kept him out toward the end of last year, a little bit later into the summer. So, like, I don't know how much that's playing into it. It's just me kind of hypothesizing and speculating a little bit. But, like, I'm just going to go with Moss, because as long as they keep splitting that workload, Moss has been pretty good, and he keeps finding the end zone somehow.
You know, and the other thing, too, is, like, it'd be one thing to, you know, say, okay, well, they're working Taylor back in, so Moss is going to get some of the work. He's been productive. You know, he's been very productive with this work. And it could be an instance where you just keep playing Moss until you have that 25 touch game for Taylor and Moss just gets in for like 2 carries or something like that. Well, then you know. Yep. Josh Downs still a little bit of a wild card, so I get that. Joshua Palmer or Logan Thomas is our next one. Let's assume tight end premium scoring here for this. Logan Thomas is at the New York Giants. Great matchup for him. Although the game in Arrowhead for the Chargers and Chiefs, I mean, that's going to be a high scoring game as well. And Palmer is probably going to be the number 3 option in that game. I think it's a big Eckler week, so I think he's the number 3 option between Allen and Eckler. Tight end premium, Logan Thomas or Joshua Palmer?
I'm going to go with Josh Palmer just barely, because like we were kind of talking about earlier with Quentin Johnston. It's just like he's not playing that big a factor. Like the ball is going to go to Josh Palmer enough as it is. But like I would say this. I understand tight end premium scoring, just rolling with Logan Thomas anyway, because like you said, matchups like super good. And despite not really doing so hot last week, he's been targeted plenty in the Commanders offense. They are throwing to the tight end position a lot. So like I'm non-committal, but I think you could go either way and end up being super good. I like both of them.
Jamal Agnew back in the game, by the way, and the Jaguars just did a little trickeration, a toss out to Christian Kirk, throws it back to Trevor Lawrence, and he hits Jamal Agnew for about a 15-20 yard gain here. So it looks like Agnew is good to go. 14:40 to go in the second quarter, 7-3 Jacksonville. Let's go rapid fire on these last couple. We'll just spend 15-20 seconds on each one. Number 1, Chris Lude in the chat, Romeo Dobbs or Jerry Jeudy this week. I already said I'd play Jordan Love over Russell Wilson. So more bullish on my Packers. It's close, but I'm going to play Dobbs over Jeudy. Herms, what about you?
I'm going Dobbs.
You're going Dobbs. Okay. Last one, Keontae Ingram or Cade Otton. Again, assuming tight end premium scoring. Otton is another guy who's getting more targets for Tampa. Keontae Ingram still at the top of the depth chart. Didn't share as much as we thought about with DeMercado last week, but there's Damian Williams there too. Which one would you play this week, Ingram or Otton?
I kind of like the matchup for Ingram. I think it's going to be a pretty good opportunity for him to feast. I'm going to say Ingram just to be different. But, man, I could see both of these. Like, it's like who falls in the end zone for a touchdown, right? That's the guy you want to start. Pretty much.
Herms, very briefly on here. We will follow you on the X at Herms NFL. DraftSharks.com is where to check out all your work. Am I forgetting anything? Is there anything else I should know about where we can find more Herms content?
That's about it. www.draftsharks.com, baby. Woo!
All right, there it is. That is going to do it for tonight. I'll see you in the Bettorcast, everyone. Reminder, next week we'll be going live with Doug Orth from Fantasy Football Today, live on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Remember to go to myffpc.com, join that weekly challenge, and follow Herms on Twitter at Herms NFL. Check out all his work at draftsharks.com. Plenty of stuff going on with the FFPC socials, too, if you want to check us out there. We will be back here Thursday at 7 o'clock. Doug Orth from Fantasy Football Today. Herms, be good. Enjoy the rest of the game. I always appreciate it, dude.
Thanks for having me on, man.
The best of the Better Sports Network is up next. We'll see you in the Bettorcast right now. Thanks for watching, everybody.